us, but the additional challenges and barriers that impacts us that does not have a direct effect on mainstream, but they can become an accomplice in the work that we are doing in terms of the advocacy. And three, speaking of being an accomplice and being an ally, to join in those efforts with us as we continue to protect and advance the rights of people and making sure that they have access to the voting ballot. So that was pretty much in essence the three pillars behind the reason for the documentary. And we figured the best way to do that was to create the documentary and to travel across the country, specifically on the East Coast, and to talk about why we are passionate and why we are determined more now than ever to make sure that we are a part of the electoral process, that we are participating in the political process, and that not only that we are active and that we desire to be involved in the electoral process because we have that right to do so, but that we are knowledgeable. We are knowledgeable. We know what the issues are, but we also know the issues that impact us and what is driving us there. And so we have approximately about 42 million individuals that are eligible to vote that are disabled. We are striving to make sure that we reach as close as possible to that 40.2 million. And so that was the vision and the purpose behind the documentary, to make sure that we have a collective voice from people with disabilities from the community. And so that was the whole purpose of the documentary. And to your point, yes, it was accepted in Utopia Film Festival. We were one in, and I believe it was 200 that they looked at, and we are one in 44 that actually made it to the festival. So we are very proud of that accomplishment and that work. And I have to give a lot of credit to my director and colleague who was responsible for directing the documentary, Mr. Jack Rose, and he was simply phenomenal in directing it. And it was truly an honor and privilege to work with him on this project.
Okay, so what inspired you to become a leader and an advocate in the disability community, and how has your personal experience shaped your approach?
Great question, great question. So unfortunately, Ron, I come to the disability community by way of tragedy. I say that because it was very unfortunate and at a very young age. So at the age of 9, I acquired an incomplete spinal cord injury. It was caused by a drunk driver tractor trailer accident that killed my entire family, my mom, my 3-month-old sister, and my stepfather. All of them died, and I am giving you the abridged version of the tragedy of the accident because I don't want you to be in tears and your listeners to be in tears as well if I gave the full story. And within that story, it's so multi-layered in terms of me being able to overcome a lot of the adversities that I experienced physically and even emotionally. But moving forward, so I was raised by my aunt, my mom's sister, who's a single mother, raised a daughter same age as me and her son that was 5 years younger. And she held it down in terms of making sure that we had a safe place to live while indoctrinating morals and principles, keeping us grounded in Christian beliefs and in church, making sure that we carry ourselves to be respectable women. As I got to college, I became a little bit of a heathen there. And so I kept some of those principles. I did, hang out in the clubs, and I wore the skirt and the boots to the knee because I didn't let my disability stop me. It didn't dictate and define my personality. And I wasn't treated as a person with a disability. My family knew I had these physical challenges at times, but they did not treat me as a woe is us and woe is Monica. It was more of, she has this disability, we're gonna make sure she has physical therapy, we're gonna make it work. We're gonna try to still continue to have a life of normalcy for our family and for Monica. And so I suffered an incomplete spinal cord injury. At first, I was paralyzed from the waist down because my back was split wide open. And I was paralyzed from the waist down, but God had greater plans, and the swelling around my spine subsided, and I was able to start feeling below my waist and start physical therapy. That's what I said, Ron, my story is, it's multi-layered. It's a story after story after story. So when I was in college, I had friends that weren't disabled. I was the only person with a disability. And shout out to my friends from college. We're still very close and very close knit. And so we actually were the epitome of what DEIA is about: diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and belonging. Because they did not treat me as a person with a disability. They treated me as who I am as an individual, my characteristics, my traits, how I carried and conducted myself, how we treated each other in a group, as a group of friends in college. And so when I graduated from college, I had this same type of concept and mentality that, the world, society must be like this as well, that they were inclusive and that they were welcoming. And so I was excited about applying for jobs. I got my degrees, and, that was the gateway to success. That's how I was raised. Well, life hit me with a completely different perspective, because when I started applying for jobs, no one would hire me. No one. And I couldn't understand for the life of me why. What was the purpose behind not giving me a shot? I have my degrees. My family said that's the gateway to success, and that opens up the doors of opportunities for jobs and for gainful employment. I was taught not to rely on the system. I was taught that I was more than capable of being able to be employed and pay my taxes and live a quality, productive life like everyone else. So my family did not teach me to get on Social Security or to rely on those other services and programs. She taught me, my aunts and all of my family, all of my aunts, they taught me, you work hard, then you can play hard and you can have fun. But if you don't work hard, then you can't enjoy the fruits of any type of labor, because you didn't put in to enjoy that type of life. So you have to put in the work to enjoy the type of life that you want to live. That was how I was raised, and that's what carried me through in college, while again still being a little bit of a heathen and acting up at times. And so I began to wonder psychologically, which I know this also happens with members of my community. Well, what is my purpose? Why am I here? I said, as a person that became disabled, that came to this world by tragedy, well, I said, God, why did you leave me here? Why did you take my mom and 3-month-old sister and stepfather and left me here? What is my purpose if I can't utilize the skills and the knowledge that I have attained? So what am I doing? What am I supposed to be doing? And that's when I went back to what I was good at in school, which I was always good with government. I was pretty good in English, and I was always good with debating. And so, because history was my thing, I loved history. Yeah. That was my number one subject, to be honest. And then I said to myself, well, let me go and listen to a couple of these elected officials and these candidates running for public office. In Virginia, there's an election every year. And this was around the time when the Obama-Biden campaign was getting a lot of energy, but there was also some local and statewide races in Virginia. And so I said, let me go to this town hall meeting and see what they're talking about, because I love politics. I love to create policies for the betterment of people with disabilities. And Ron, I'm hearing all of these elected officials talk about common sense, pragmatic solutions, what they've done while they were in office, what they plan to do to protect the middle class and provide these opportunities for the middle class and for the working class and for everyone. Nothing pertaining to, not one subject, one mention of the disability community. So this is what I did. When it was time for questions, I made sure that I was next to the last person to ask a question. So I raised my hand. And so I said, hi, Monica Wiley here, a resident of Virginia, live in the metropolitan area of Richmond, Virginia. My question to the candidates and the incumbents here that are running for office and hoping to be reelected to their respective office, what do you plan to do to support the Americans with Disabilities Act and advance it? Crickets.
I was going to say that.
They had nothing to say. They didn't have anything to say, not because they wasn't interested, but because they didn't know that they should be connecting to and speaking with individuals that reside in their community. We don't live in institutional settings anymore. We are now in the community and we're integrated, right? So there's the whole community integration that definitely stemmed from the lovely woman, she passed away now, from Georgia in 1999, and that's why we have the Olmstead decision. The Olmstead decision provides supports and services for individuals with disabilities to live into the community. And so that taught them right there that we exist and that we live in the community and that they should earn our vote and that they should be connecting with us so that we can see what they're going to do to effectively advocate for the rights and needs of people with disabilities. And from that point, Ron, I knew that night when I left there, I knew what my purpose was at that point. I knew exactly where I needed to be because so many of them came up to me and said, you opened our eyes, you have awakened us, and we would love to talk with you to see how we can be better connected and better advocates for you all and for your community to support your rights and your quality of living. And that's how everything pretty much just took off from there in terms of my background and experience in policy and partisan politics and advocacy and all the great things, all the good things.
Okay. So what steps need to be taken to ensure that people with disability are better representative in international discussion and decision-making processes?
So I would say a couple of things. That's actually a great question. A couple of things. One is, I would say, I feel like we, as members of the cross disability community, should make sure that we are attending as many events or community events as possible to show that we are active, we are here, and that we have issues and concerns that we want elected officials to pay attention to. And I know everyone cannot physically go to these events, but we now live in an era since COVID where there are events that are virtual. There are events that are hybrid. So this gives us a gateway, a pipeline for us to now insert ourselves into different events and into different meetings and into different activities so that we are present. And then when we are present, be self-assured in our presence. Make sure that we are recognized for our presence. Again, the power resides in us. And in order for us to exercise that power, we have to make sure that we are visible, but visible in a confident way, knowing that who you are, why you are here, and the impact that you're going to make is going to be meaningful and it's going to make a difference. So that's the first thing. The second thing is making sure that you stay as connected to candidates and elected officials as much as possible. Mm-hmm. As much as possible. Continue to push the bar for them to support you, for them to recognize you, for them. They work for you. You don't work for them. They work for you. So in order for this, it's a partnership. When we're talking about the government, when we're talking about advocacy, when we're talking about being a change agent, it's a partnership. One can't work without the other. The right hand needs the left hand and the left hand needs the right hand. So they work together. In order for that to take place, we have to work together. And so we have to make sure that we're establishing relationships with these elected officials and making sure that they give us a seat at the table. And if they don't give it, you bring one to the table. I can't remember exactly what not elected official, but what community activist and civil rights leader that said it. I want to say it's Shirley Chisholm. I'm not quite sure, but I believe she's the one that said, they don't give you a seat, you bring a seat. And I'm one of those type of people that I will bring a seat because I will find a way to make sure that you recognize my presence here and my purpose here and the impact that I can make and that we can make collectively to get things done for people with disabilities. And then lastly, take advantage of all opportunities and make sure that you are partnering with and connecting with individuals outside of the disability community, because that's what moves the needle. And how you connect with communities and individuals outside the disability community, you go back to why you are here at this event, why you are here in this office connected, talking to this elected official, why you are here doing the work that you're doing. Again, the disability community is intersectional. We're not monolith. We're not just a person with a disability. We are a person with a disability who are Black, who is a Christian, who could be a Jew, who also loves politics, who also loves music, who also loves hip hop, who also loves singing, who also loves opera, who also loves fashion, who also loves traveling. These different groups, they exist. We exist. We like the same things. So in order for us to build that type of partnership and those type of thought partners with us, we have to also make sure, again, that we are visible, that we are welcoming. You know, I know some people may have an issue with what I'm getting ready to say. But at times, a lot of us in the disability community put up a wall. And we kind of put ourselves in these silos and in these types of thought processes that think that, oh, no one is going to appreciate us. No one is going to value us. Only those of us in the disability community is going to accept us or respect us or appreciate us. We've got to get rid of that internally too, because that impacts your confidence and your purpose for why you are where you are and what you are doing. So we have got to be embracing and welcoming as well. It's a two-way street. It's a two-way, it's a two-sided coin. They have to embrace us, but we also have to be willing to embrace them. And we can't automatically just have this perception of, let me be hard and have this hard exterior because they're not going to accept this. And I get where it's coming from, because we're constantly disenfranchised. We're constantly disrespected. We are underserved. We're underrepresented. They tend to have this, we feel sorry for you, this woe is me type of mentality. I get that. And that's something that we also have to teach them. That's why I do a lot of work in communication and racial equity and talking about disability justice and the intersectionality of everything. Because again, the cross-disability community is the cross-disability community. Everyone that's disabled comes to the disability community in various ways. And like I like to say, this disability community will welcome you because you can become disabled at any given moment.
Yes. Which brings to this point right here. Unemployed, underemployment remains a significant issue for people with disability. What are the most important actions that business and policymakers can do to improve job opportunities?
A couple of things, Ron, we can do. One is we can, aside from holding the elected officials accountable for making sure that they that they establish and create policies and laws that would be meaningful to gainful employment for people with disabilities. There are some states that currently have what is called I can't. What's it just escaped me just that minute there. Maybe it'll come back to me in a minute. But there are some states where you are paid at the bare minimum, and that's all that you are able to receive. Whereas some states have eliminated that so that people with disabilities can get gainful employment while their Social Security or whatever supplemental income they receive, it's not jeopardized. We have got to get rid of that policy completely. It needs to be a law, just a blanket law that eliminates that barrier, because that impacts our ability to live our quality of life, for healthcare delivery, for things that we enjoy, that we like to do, such as traveling, or maybe going out to an event and having a glass, a drink of wine, or even just the ability to be able to afford good food for us, for proper nutrients, because the food tax these days and just the food cost is extremely high. And so if you have someone that is living on supplemental income while also having a job that only pays them, they only can be paid but so much because of that supplemental income, that puts them in a very tight bind in terms of being able to take care of their place of residence, which housing is a huge issue. It also impacts their ability to be able to have a cushion in the event that insurance denies or takes a long time with trying to replace equipment that they may need for their disability to help with their quality of life. Just an array of different things, Ron. And so one is we have to come together to have a law that just eliminates this sub-minimum wage. Thank you. That's exactly what it was. It just came to me. It is, I think it's the Workforce Innovation Act, and I could have the acronym wrong, but it's the sub-minimum wage, where if you are on Social Security, and some states still adopt this to this day, if you are on Social Security, you can only make with so much at your job. Mm-hmm. And that's not fair. Why should we have to live at the bare minimum standards, but everyone else outside the disability community can make as much as they want to make, however they want to make? Why should we be set to that type of standard? That's an unfair standard, and it's actually inhumane. And so that's something that we have to get rid of. In Maryland, we no longer have that, but in other states, it is. And I'm not sure if Texas still has a sub-minimum wage or not in terms of people with disabilities and having supplemental income. But if that is the case, then I implore my comrades in the disability community in Texas to come together to have that eliminated, because it is a huge barrier financially, physically, mentally, emotionally, and health-wise. So that's one, Ron, is hold these elected officials accountable.
Yes.
I would say the second thing is, again, going back to your connections, your relationships, and continue to build those relationships and to show others your talent and your ability. Everyone has a combination of talents and skills that can be very meaningful. Sometimes, majority of us, not even sometimes, majority of us, we have to be entrepreneurs. Sometimes in terms of the capital to entrepreneurship, it's not always readily available or receives the same amount that individuals that are not disabled that are entrepreneurs. So we have to come together as the entrepreneurs in our community and bind together to see how we can support one another. I would say the third thing is once you are able to get across or remove some of those barriers to employment, and let's say you're one of the few lucky ones that are able to get in and have gainful employment, then make yourself available to those outside of the workforce and be a mentor and be an ally and be a support system mechanism for those individuals. And then in the inside, while you're on the inside, create opportunities from within. DEIA groups are phenomenal to have. Their employee resource groups, those are phenomenal groups to have within the respective workforce that could be very meaningful and very impactful as a pipeline to start creating some different opportunities and better employment opportunities for people with disabilities. And so I hope that answers your question.
Oh, yes, it sure did, which leads me into this one. What are your thoughts of accessibility of higher education for people with disability, and what policies would you propose to improve it?
Very great question. Great question. I would say in terms of accessibility, we've seen surprisingly some improvement with accessibility to post-secondary education, because now you can attend undergrad and get your post-secondary degree online. And if you have the necessary equipment, or if You have some of the accessibility measures that now these different companies have added. For example, on your phone, I have T-Mobile. T-Mobile has it on the text where there is an accessibility button. And under accessibility button, there's so many different features based on your disability to be able to effectively communicate. So we've seen some progress. But there's still some more work to do. There is a lack of proper broadband in the rural areas for people with disabilities to be able to go to school, a school that is good for the concentration, the subject that they're trying to get their degree in, as well as accommodating them because of their disability. But the broadband is not as great. We've got to improve broadband in the rural areas. So I would say that is definitely one. So increasing in accessibility and technology, specifically in broadband for the rural areas. I would also say to improve accessibility for higher education is I would say to make sure that individuals have an opportunity to be able to retain the information in a space and in a time frame that's conducive for them. For example, when I was in school and in high school, middle school, and college, middle school and high school, there was a 504 plan under the Rehabilitation Act, which states that an individual that may need additional time to get to and from class or additional minutes because they got to class 5 or 10 minutes later because of their disability, to get that extension to them when it came time for tests or projects or presentations. That same type of measure needs to be applicable in college. And there aren't enough universities that provide that type of support. There are some, but we can take it a little bit further. So, for instance, for those that are neurodivergent or have a intellectual disability, they require a little bit more time. So if a professor knows that they are about to give their students a midterm exam 3 weeks out from the midterm exam, then let the individuals that are disabled, let them know within that time frame so they can start preparing for what the midterm exam is going to require. So on the day of the midterm exam, they're prepared because they've had ample time to review the material. It doesn't take much. When I talk about accessibility is the derivative of accessibility is access. Everyone needs access. I needed access to you to be able to come on your show today. You needed access to whatever type of broadband or internet that you use to be able to stream your show. Access is for everyone. We need to start looking at that word access and accessibility to be inclusive of everyone. Yes, the disability community has taken that at the helm and making sure that it is applied to our community because we are constantly denied and have the lack of access. But when we think about access, why can't we just be inclusive of that word? Why can't access be embraced and be supported for everyone? And so that's what I feel that is a policy and a law that should be provided for people with disabilities based on their need in terms of higher ed.
So now I'm going to hit you up with this right here.
Okay.
How can the healthcare system better address the unique needs of people with disability, especially in terms of access, affordability, and specialized care?
Oh, I love this question. Thank you, Ron, for the question. This year, and the Biden-Harris administration should be applauded for several things that they accomplished this year. But one in particular, since this is a high-stakes voting election year, and we are, 7 days out from the election? I can't keep up. 8 days out from the election? Let's just go with 7, 8 days out from the election. Yeah. Well, this year, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid did something that was very groundbreaking in terms of voter registration access for people with disabilities. It was pretty much a part of President Biden's 2021 executive order about promoting voting access for people with disabilities. So it was definitely a significant step to making sure that Americans with disabilities have the right to participate in the democracy. And what they did was they included in their systems and online a way for you to be registered to vote. So it's actually on healthcare.gov. And so if you go on healthcare.gov, you can access the voter registration portal, and that gives them the opportunity to be able to get registered to vote. Prior to this year, prior to this administration, the Health and Human Services, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid did not provide that type of service and support. And so this year, an individual with a disability, if they did not have the opportunity to register to vote or have access to see about voting, they can on healthcare.gov and access the voter registration. And so this definitely gives us the opportunity to be more involved in the electoral process, but it's also definitely a critical link between civic engagement and the health outcomes. Because with this type of groundbreaking effort, what it does is it provides them the ability to be able to foster better health, but then also not just foster better health for themselves, but better health in the nation. And again, the ability to vote and participate in a civic way. So civically being able to participate. So we've seen some definitely some significant increases in health, and especially with health and access to voting. And so I want to make sure that I give a shout out to the administration on their efforts and working with the Health and Human Services and Centers for Medicare and Medicaid on this groundbreaking effort.
Okay, mental health often intersects with disability. How can you see the relationship between mental health services and disability evolving?
Excuse me, sorry about that, the allergies.
Okay.
Can you repeat that question for me one more time, Ron? I thought I caught half of it, but I want to make sure that I heard it in its entirety so I can answer it to the best of my ability.
Mental health often intersects with disabilities. How do you see the relationship between mental health and services and disability evolving?
That's a great question. And first, before I answer it as entirety, I think we have to recognize that that mental health and mental illness is often used under one umbrella, under one term, and it is not.
Thank you.
Mental illness is a different diagnosis from mental health. Mental illness is a diagnosis that is given more often than not from genetics. That tends to fall within the genetic realm. Whereas mental health, which some individuals that have mental illness, depending on the level of their mental illness, certain environments and certain type of unexpected occurrences can take that mental illness to a different level. But mental health, which everyone struggles with mental health, because when you have an unexpected situation that takes place in your life that changes who you are temporarily, that is a mental health crisis. And so that's why it's very important that they say to make sure you protect your mental health, because the pressures of society, the pressures of everyday responsibilities, the pressures of voting for an election and the outcome of the election can tend to activate certain stressors and impact the mental health. So first, let's make sure that we recognize that mental illness is definitely different from mental health. Having said that, both of them do fall under the umbrella of the disability community. And so what we need to do, or some recommendations in terms of supporting and having access to some services that supports and protects our mental health as well as individuals with mental illness, is one, I would say, let me start with the mental health piece first, because again, everybody is impacted by some type of mental health crisis. Do something that is going to make you come back to who you are prior to an unfortunate situation or circumstance. Remember who you were before this happened. And then think about what makes you comfortable, what relaxes you, what makes you smile, what makes you be the Ron that everyone knows that you are, what makes you be the Monica that everyone knows that you are, what makes you be you, and the uniqueness of you. I am a firm believer and big believer in spas. I love spas. I think spas just are good for your body, health-wise. It's good for you mentally. It's good for you emotionally. And it allows you to just decompress, truly relax, while also having the time to try to process what is currently going on that's impacting your mental health. And then make sure that once you recognize that these things, or whatever the situation is that's impacting your mental health, that it cannot have you, that the world needs you, your friends need you, your family needs you, people need you. So we cannot succumb to that issue that's impacting our mental health. And we have to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to protect it at all costs. Now, I'm not saying all costs meaning go broke, okay? Yeah. Because I guess I'm also somewhat speaking for myself, because I was the type of person, and this kind of ties back in, this is interconnected to the struggles I had with employment. When I couldn't find a meaningful job, gainful employment. I'm a fashionista. I love fashion. I love to shop. I love, as you can see, I have on some nice fancy glasses. My nails have bedazzle on them. I love jewelry. I mean, I just love fashion. Lipstick is popping, for those that may be able to see that. And so that was my go-to. It was, go shopping. Well, then you have all this stuff, right? So you put a Band-Aid on, you have medicated yourself with shopping, with spending, but the problem is still there. Mm-hmm. The problem is still impacting you. The problem is still affecting you. And so you've accomplished nothing. So everything that you do to try to protect your mental health, and I mean by protect at all costs, I mean protect it at all costs as it relates to being you, but without doing additional harm. Because once you spend all that money, then you wake up, you come to the realization that the problem still exists, and you also broke. So now what?
Yeah.
Or, if you're a person that loves alcohol and loves to drink, now you have drunken yourself into a stupor. That still costs money. Now that you've come out of that drunken stupor and you're back to, you're coherent again, and you recognize the problem is still there. So not only did you not fix the problem, you're broke. And the problem still exists, and then it's going to become a snowball effect. It's going to continue to keep going like a hamster in a wheel. So make sure that whatever you choose to do, or that some of the things that you do that would make you just say, you know what, this situation's here, this situation exists, but this situation does not have to take over me, because I have goals to accomplish. I have things to do. There are whatever you desire, that you desire to do or be, that gets you going, that excites you every day when you wake up every morning. Keep your eyes focused on that. Keep that centered, and then make sure that you do everything that is associated with what gets you excited in the morning, what wakes you up, what gives you that fuel of energy to be able to be the person that you are. And then in terms of mental illness, I'm liking the fact that lately you are seeing, or over at least the past couple of years, you are seeing people come out and say, I have mental illness. I struggle with mental illness. And they're talking about it on national platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yes.
part of us as humanity, as a collective, and embracing one another, it's one, embracing one another and not looking at the mental illness as someone that we should be fearful of. They are a part of humanity. They are a part of us. They are connected to us because they are human beings. So let's embrace them, just like people with disabilities overall want to be embraced. Those with mental illness want to be embraced, and let's not label them or show them, by our actions and the way that we carry ourselves with them as, being fragile. Embrace them for them, because they are who they are, and they are a part of this human race, and they have something to contribute. And lastly, I want to say, Ronald, is that we need to have more investment, more of public-private partnership, to create more investments, to be able to provide additional support for mental illness and mental health, for both. It requires, again, a partnership in all of us. And so if we just extend the line, what they say, extend grace, give grace, let's just go ahead on and extend the ability to be able to establish more public-private partnerships to provide some support for mental health and mental illness. And I hope that addresses your question.
Oh, yes, it did. And then some. I appreciate that, because you turned around and you broke it down where everybody know the difference. And that's what we need to hear. How can you better protect the rights of people with disability in criminal justice system, particularly in a term of accessibility, fair treatment, and support?
Love this question, Ronald. Love this question. One is be a fighter. Be a fighter. I love to quote John Lewis, the late Congressman John Lewis. Don't be afraid to get into good trouble. I wear that badge as a badge of honor. I get into good trouble. Matter of fact, when I was living in Virginia, when the elected officials would see me at an event or at a town hall meeting, they would be quick to say, okay, what did we not do? What did we not say? Was our actions not indicative to our words? What's going on, Monica? Because here comes trouble. You're right. Here comes trouble. Wear it with a badge of honor. Get into good trouble. You are the policymaker. You are the law. You are the one that is able to not only support the law, but advance the law, advance the rights of people with disabilities, because we live it. We live it. And so there's no better knowledge or experience than lived experience. And then what makes you a triple threat is not only do you have the lived experience, but then you have the education on top of it. Be proud of it, because as the woman that I love, just absolutely, I constantly repeat her slogan all the time. She is my Shiro from the 1960s and 70s, and that is Fannie Lou Hamer. Her birthday, I believe, was October 6th. She said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that is what the disability community is. We're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's why we're going to come out in droves and vote in this election. That's why we are going to still be around even after this election. That's why we're going to continue to increase our participation in the electoral process and in the political process. And that's why you're going to start to see more individuals that's going to run for public office on the local level, because we're sick and tired of being silent. We're sick and tired of our voices not being heard. We're sick and tired of them not taking us seriously. We're sick and tired of laws not being created for the betterment of us. I'm sorry, I got on my soapbox there, Ronald.
That's all right. That's all right. I love what you said. When you show up to a town hall somewhere, they're automatically thinking what they didn't do. You are putting an impact on disability when they see you coming, and they know you're not coming with that same old la stuff. You got the facts right in front of you. You let them know what we need, and what are you going to do about it?
What are you going to do about it? Right.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I mean, that's something else. Okay, so we're going to talk about your documentary again. Okay. How did your involvement um, in this particular role of doing a documentary, how did you get involved in that, and how did you prepare for it, and what was your participation in it?
So thank you for the question. I like that question too. I would say, I always envision myself being a spokesperson or the person that does a lot of the external facing for corporate America or the nonprofit sector. Excuse me, my allergies are acting up. I sincerely apologize. And when those doors wouldn't open for me at all because I was discriminated based on paper and not based on my skill. And so I built my career in the political sector and then finally was able to shift to nonprofit. That was one of the core reasons, one of the main purposes as to why I wanted to be a part of this project. And secondly, I would say that I love asking questions. It was a joy to interview voters with disabilities and hear the commonality between me and that person disabled, but also see the difference. And what we did in terms of preparation, we went ahead and we screened a lot of the individuals that were interested in participating in the documentary. And once we determined who these individuals were going to be, because as you see, it is a representation of the cross disability community. It's not just one particular type or race or gender or ethnicity. It is a collective voice of the disability community. We had questions that were already prepared and ready for me to ask. But Ron, I found myself, excuse me again, I found myself as I was asking one or two questions, the responses that I was hearing from the questions prompted questions from me that was not a part of some of the scripted questions. And then it led more into a conversation. Because ultimately, what we wanted for people to see from the documentary, not only a representation across the disability community and the advocacy and the work that is being done on the local and state level, but that also to see that a conversation was happening, that we were in discussion about why we are going to come out in droves and vote and why we're not allowing any type of barriers to disenfranchise us from voting. And so that's what we wanted to make sure that was conveyed in the documentary. And that's what excited me as well, was that I was able to have these conversations, these meaningful, very painful, but definitely purposeful conversations about, one, being disabled, two, the advocacy or the work that's being done to protect voting rights for people with disabilities, and three, their main reason or reasons for voting in this election cycle. And so those things, they excite me. They make me want to do even more. They ignite more of a fire in my belly.
Yeah.
And it makes me even fall in love with my work even more when I was interviewing the voters, the participants from our documentary, and so that's this was this was actually kind of a dream. You know, God works in mysterious ways, and it's always on His timing, because this is something I wanted to do. I've always wanted to do this, and the work that I'm doing now is definitely meaningful and great, and I'm just very, very grateful and honored that I was able to meet members, comrades of my community, but then also being able to share their story and their passion for voting rights through me interviewing them and narrating our stories and my story as well.
Yeah, when I watched the documentary, there was two people that stood out to me in that documentary. One was the attorney. The other one was the blind lady. She had so much spunk the way she was talking. Like, so what if I'm blind? You treat me this way. But the attorney is the one I focus on because he said that there was no way. What I think he said it as a rise to go down into the courtroom and stuff. Now,
Yes.
why are you going to do that? And this guy's an attorney and disabled. Oh, you know, he could bring a lawsuit against you like it's no tomorrow by not having all that there. And that got to me on how he is trying to function as much as he can, but he had all these roadblocks in his way. And for him to accomplish that, I thought that was a good feat.
It was, and I think during that time too, Ron, buildings, at least those types of buildings, they were grandfathered in under the ADA. And then after 2001, I'm not sure if they made any changes to that court building or not. I want to say I don't think so still, but definitely during that time, because of the age of the building, it was grandfathered in. And so all they had to do was just do the basic, right? The
Yeah.
basic accessibility, the basic accommodations. And see, this is the mindset of corporate America, of the workforce, of society as a whole. Well, I mean, as long as they're just able to get in, they should be fine. That's good enough. We've accommodated them. We've given them access. No, we're not a bare minimum community. Shouldn't receive bare minimum type of support. So don't treat us the same. That still isn't an accommodation, because he still wasn't able to sit with the other lawyers, with his other peers in the legal field, to be able to argue the case. He still had to do it from a different place. That is not access, nor is that accommodation. Accommodation is when you've been able to make sure that there is equity. What they did to him was equality. Now I'm going back to my DEIA hat. What they gave him was, oh, this is equality. He's able to get in. He can sit over here, and then he can argue his case or his reasons for being there. That's not equity. Equity is when he's able to be there with the rest of his legal peers to be able to argue the case or his purpose for being there. We've got to get rid of the equality and make sure that there's equity for my community.
Okay. Final question. All right. What advice would you give to others in the disability community who are passionate about civic engagement and want to make a difference?
I would say a couple of good things that you can do is, one, be your own community leader. Be your own advocate first. Be your own advocate. Make sure that you speak up for whatever you are advocating for in terms of your right as a person with a disability. And then make sure that others recognize it. Again, we have got to get to a place where we are confident and comfortable with who we are as a person with a disability. And so that is part of being able to effectuate change, because change is not going to happen if we don't show up. And furthermore, if we show up and we are not speaking up. In order for us to speak out and speak up, we got to speak out. We got to be present. And so I would say, make sure that you are comfortable with who you are and your ability to be an advocate, because you are an advocate. Again, you are the law. You are the policy that is needed. Recognize that you are what needs to make happen. You are that ambassador of change for the betterment of yourself and our community. Secondly, whatever groups that you are in or that you are connected to, in terms of, again, whether it's music, whether it's dance, whether it's arts and craft, whether it is traveling, whether it is gaming, again, the access to different groups and different events that is of interest to you is available now, and it's a little easier now because of the hybrid model and the virtual model. So we can now show up to an event at 6, 7 o'clock and ask a question, even if it is an event that is pertaining to arts and craft. Well, I'm sure within arts and craft, there is some type of policy that needs to be created, or some type of lack of access or accommodation for you within the arts and crafts world. That is your space. Use your space. Use that space. That's the space that you're in. Use it to your advantage so that you are creating a bigger door and window for others to be able to come in and be that mentor. Little do you know, you are a mentor to somebody else, whether you are mentoring them directly or indirectly, because there's someone else that's looking at you and looking at what you're accomplishing and what you have done. And they want to know, what can they do and maybe do it a little bit better? And there's nothing wrong with that. So that we were able to pass the mantle on and continue to build the type of world and community and quality of life that we desire to live. And then thirdly, connect with these leaders, these other community leaders. Have individuals that are not members of the disability community that you have a commonality with. Or even if you don't have a commonality with, but you feel that this individual can be an added value to the voice, to the movement, to what we're trying to accomplish. So make sure that your advocacy and the people in your advocacy world is diverse, because that's what's going to create the accessibility and the belonging that we should have, the belonging that we deserve. We belong in these spaces. We belong in local government. We belong in state government. We belong in corporate America. We belong in nonprofit. We belong in the music industry. We belong in media. We belong.
Okay.
So know that you belong and make it happen. And then lastly is continue to, I'm gonna go ahead and say this, continue to put that fire on their back. Hold these elected officials accountable.
Yes.
Accountable at all times. Do not have a problem saying, well, remember I mentioned to you, that this was an issue that's impacting my community or impacting me. Is there any possible way, that I can come and maybe speak at your meeting to have others join in, because they need to be aware of this so that we can create these policies on a local, state, or federal level. Make sure that whatever's going on, if you have access to be able to advocate on a national level, make sure you're connected nationally. And make sure that your voice is being heard on the national level as well. But I feel like the route to begin to make an impact and be a fierce disability advocate, activist, leader is recognizing the power, the voice in you, the belonging in you.
Okay. Wow. You know what, Monica, anything this station, anything that we could do for you, that Texans could do for you, please reach out to us, because we have to hear this and let everybody else hear it too. I mean, we don't want it only to stay in your community. We want it to overflow to everybody, so everybody get an understanding on what you're going through, because some people just don't understand it. But the way you broke things down today, I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of listeners now understand the struggles that you go through.
Absolutely, absolutely, Ron. And I hope that the listeners were able to learn something from this, but also are willing to look at the disability community in a different lens, in a different light, and say, what must I do? What can I do? Like the preacher would say in church growing up, when you are trying to figure out how you can no longer be a heathen, a backslider, and try to live, your life the best way you can. And you say, what must I do to be saved? I hope that the listeners are saying, what must I do? What can I do to be a part of this collective effort and movement,
Yes.
to be a part of the voice, because my voice is needed, my presence is needed, and one day, I hope it doesn't happen, but it very well could happen to me. I can become disabled instantly, or as we continue to age, certain things tend to happen and we fall in the disability community. And so there's nothing more like the present than to join in with us and be a part of this work and of this advocacy and of the movement. And lastly, I would say, Ronald, too, is support individuals with disabilities that desire to run for public office. We should not look at people with disabilities as, oh, this person has a disability, so they're not able to canvass, or, they may need modifications for certain aspects and activities associated with running a campaign or being a candidate. If you see that this individual has the passion, the knowledge, is connected to the work, is connected to the community, connected to all communities, and can really do some really great work in local, state, or national or federal government, support them. Support them, because it takes all of us. Like they said, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes all of us to see the change that we desire to see. And so if a candidate that is disabled is running, and you know that candidate is a great candidate, speaks well, knows the issues, knows the laws, has a platform for what they want to see take place, and is able to work together with other like-minded individuals to get things done, support them.
Yes.
Support them.
Yes. All right. Oh, man, Monica, it was great having you on the show. We're going to have you again in the future. And we're going to talk about some other stuff, but you just keep on doing what you're doing. Like I said, anything you need from Texas in Color, reach out either to me or Tammy, and we'll see what we can do for you.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here with you, Ronald, and be on the Texas in Color show. I truly enjoyed myself, and I look forward to returning. And thanks, everyone, to those that were listening this afternoon. I hope you enjoyed this time with us, and hopefully you learned something, and it gave you a different perspective and insight on how you can become a better advocate, or even an advocate for the disability community. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Record.
All right, everybody. That was Monica Wiley. Man, I learned a lot. I learn every time I have somebody on the show. So, but anyway, everybody, we appreciate everybody tuning in this afternoon on Texas in Color. I am Ronald Gordon, and we will see you next time. Have a very good evening.